Hello everybody.
We are live! Okay, cool. Hello everyone, welcome to the Spacedock Twitch.
Yeah.
And also Pete's thing, when we do that as well. It's a kind of a hybrid thing we're doing here.
No, it's called EuroHybrid, Pete's channel. That's
right, yes. Go on then. So we'll introduce ourselves going down. Pete, why don't you start?
Hello, I'm Pete. I'm from a channel called EuroHybrid. We do reviews about lots of different television shows. We recently did full recaps and reviews of all the Star Trek episodes. So I'm here to do a real recap with Dan and Alistair from Spacedock.
Everybody sound off in the chat if you're here. Let us know that you're on station. And we'll give it a couple of minutes for everybody to filter in, and then we'll get going.
Yeah, okay, sure. Sounds good.
Let us know if the audio sounds okay. As usual, we are boundlessly incompetent and unable to determine whether or not anything is working at any given moment.
Completely and woefully so. Sounds good. It all sounds like it's working fine. Okay, cool. So, yeah.
Nobody in the chat yet?
Supposedly not. It's okay. We'll just carry on. Okay. So, we're here to talk about... What are we here to talk about, Pete?
Star Trek Discovery, Season 1.
Yes.
Yes.
It's something we kind of wanted to do for a little while, and we decided, hey, Pete wants to have us on and talk about it on his channel, and we figured, instead of just sitting down and recording it, we'll stream the entire thing as well.
Yeah.
Why not? So, yeah, cool.
So, this has obviously been a supremely controversial season of television.
Yes.
Star Trek Discovery. And I am far more positive on the matter than most seem to be, but I'm not overwhelmingly positive either. So let's start with Alistair. You and I watched the opening, the two-parter.
It's like when that came out it seemed to be where the most controversy surrounded it. Controversy. Because we watched the first couple episodes, and I remember really liking the pair of them.
I thought the first two episodes were excellent.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what anybody was expecting. I'm not sure what even there was to criticise in those two episodes, because it was mostly just an event playing out. It was like a Dunkirk or something. It wasn't a character piece. It was just... It felt like a sort of pivotal moment in Federation history, and it was quite exciting to watch it play out. And the show hadn't really opened itself up to things that it could fail at yet. It was just sort of like an event.
It's just sort of different as well. I think it's what most people struggled with. It came out in like a new format. It's like we're going to tell a story that's going to arc across the entire season, which is something we hadn't really seen before properly.
Outside of late DS9.
Yeah. And they established that quite well, dramatically, in definitely the best pilot that we'd ever seen in Star Trek, I think.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. But a lot of people didn't really seem to...
Actually, yeah, I'd say so. We've got to start out with the fact that every season of Star Trek has a terrible first season. Every Star Trek show has a terrible first season.
Yeah, look at Escape to Farpoint in TNG.
Terrible.
Yeah.
It's all terrible. The first season of Enterprise is just sort of mediocre. It's not bad, but it's not great either.
Yeah.
The first season of Voyager, most of Voyager, is terrible.
I still struggle to get past the first couple of seasons whenever I try to
It's interminable. It's a sort of like testament to false consequence and meaninglessness. Yeah. And even DS9, which becomes fantastic at the end, has a kind of tepid, alright first season. Doesn't really go anywhere. But this had a great first season. Well, by the standards of the others, it wasn't flawless, but overall, it certainly did its job very well. And
did we ever actually establish whether or not that was meant to be what the 4-year Klingon War was that they always reference back to?
I don't think they care. First of all, people are massively pissed off because this show basically just doesn't care about continuity.
Mm.
And I get that might piss you off a bit, but there are people who are psychotically pissed off about this, it's just and the people who went into this show thinking that everything was going to look like it was made in the 60s, and it's like, how delusional can a person be?
Bring back the jelly buttons.
I mean, really, how could anyone have conned themselves into thinking that was going to happen?
Yeah.
Why would they want it to happen? It's not as if, the original series, I'm not much of a fan of it, has to be said. You can string me up for that if you like, but I don't care much for the original series. And even if I did, I think I would accept that it is now clearly a horrible prediction of the 23rd century, and it's aged like milk, and it doesn't need to be vindicated anymore.
The original series Star Trek, whilst, you know, could be held in some regard, is very much a product of its time. And if you tried to replicate that in too many aspects now, it just would be very badly received. And you would still get people complaining that it wouldn't be exactly like it was.
In fact, that's one thing I will say, is this show should almost certainly have been set after Voyager, Star Trek Discovery.
I don't understand why they're so reluctant to just have something that continues on after the TNG DS9 Voyager phrase.
There's basically no reason for this show to be set when it is, and they open themselves up to like the criticism of lunatics, which they didn't need to do. You don't mess with the Star Trek purists because you get burned. They're crazy, crazy people, and you don't poke the hive. So just set it after Voyager and you're safe.
I thought they could have done like a quite easy solution by doing when they actually returned to their own universe, if they'd have messed around at the time, as in where they jumped to a different time period. So sort of like Buck Rogers or Quantum.
Yeah.
So they could have jumped different times.
I do remember when Alistair, we were watching it, and they got back from the mirror universe, and they were like, "We've come back, but we've gone too far," and we were like, "Oh!" And he goes, "We've gone too far by 9 days or 9 months or whatever," and we were like, "Oh right, whatever." Like that was kind of pointless. Like and now I guess they've brought the anti-cloak algorithm back to the Federation, which doesn't make a lick of sense.
What does that all work?
I don't know how...
Supposedly that was just something which had worked in a short period of time, which now no longer applies, I guess.
I don't
know, just sit in a briefing room for 20 minutes and talk about technobabble and say that there's gravimetric interference.
No, the first season of Star Trek Discovery was mercifully free of technobabble, I thought, for the most part.
Yeah.
It was it reared its ugly head for a few scenes, but for the most part, it was okay.
Yeah. It wouldn't have really fit. It wouldn't have really gone with the format of the show.
Well, they've even said that they're putting the spore drive on hold until they figure out how not to use humans.
Oh, at the end of the season, they said they were looking for.
So it feels like they've almost decided to forget that for a second season.
I mean, understandably, anything which seems like it could be that vastly beneficial to the Federation or whatever species are around could be banned for ethical reasons is not too unbelievable. I mean, they completely got rid of genetic engineering as a premise because of all the bad stuff that led into. So the idea that just because you could only use a spore drive by stringing up some chap and damaging him greatly in some tiny little room may not be the kind of thing you want to continue to fund.
Yeah, it would be entirely within the character of the Federation
for sure.
To not do that. Although, that's another thing. If this show wasn't set when it was, then there would be a lot more tension about the future of the spore drive and how the Federation were going to use it and what was going to happen to it. Now, because the show is set before TOS, we know that somebody's just going to like trip over and drop the spore drive schematics down the toilet or something, and that just takes a massive amount of tension out of everything.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, I get that they got the goofy cameo with the Enterprise at the end. You know, great stuff. But why? Just set it. Just set it after Voyager. There's no point.
Yeah.
And there's so many more people that you could have had cameo, because all of those actors are still kicking and stuff. Whereas pretty much the only person that you could have guest in Discovery is like T'Pol. Like there's like no characters that cross over that time.
Sarek, right?
Oh, yeah, that's Sarek.
That was like the big original series cameo they had appearing. Was Sarek actually ever in the original series?
Yeah.
Was he?
He was in Journey to
Oh yeah, of course he was. Spock's dad. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Like favorite episodes.
So,
favorite episodes.
I will say that I thought the season started out great, and then we got to the Discovery, and the first episode where they were on the Discovery was pretty good, where they went and boarded the Glen.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had like 3 episodes that were all terrible, I thought. All the Mud stuff was terrible. All the early Ash Tyler stuff was terrible. The establishment of the romance plot with Michael and Tyler was awful. That was horrifically done.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point I was like, oh dearie me, this is bad. And then I think that reached its apex when we had them faffing around with blue particle aliens on a planet. And I don't even remember half of that stuff.
Oh yeah, I might have fallen asleep for part of that episode.
Yeah, and then we hit the start of the Mirror Universe arc, and it just became amazing. Like it just shot up in quality, like higher than even the pilot was. And then it stayed great for a good while, and then at the end it went down in quality a bit, but not very far. It sort of tapered out a bit, but the second half of the season largely was excellent, I thought. But it really early on there was a lot of like didn't really feel like it knew what it was.
I kind of said this about the Mirror Universe stuff when it first came about. It seemed interesting because when Discovery came out, it seemed like it wanted to have like a different kind of appeal, and it reformatted the way they did the show in a way that would contribute to that. But then they made having an entirely Mirror Universe focused plot.
Yeah, which is a niche part of established canon.
At best, it's like a niche part of whatever is like is already in Star
Which
Trek.
only going to appeal to Star Trek fans who've watched other Mirror Universe episodes.
But
which is a bit weird.
To take in that direction, I think is quite interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was.
Somebody's just commented in the chat here. It shouldn't have been the Klingons who they were at war with. Fully agreed. The Klingons are incredibly boring. They've always been incredibly boring. They were most interesting.
They were great in Deep Space Nine.
No, that's what I was going to say. They were most interesting when they were the Federation's allies.
Yeah.
As villains, they're just cardboard. Who cares? Warrior race, standard issue. They were more interesting when they were allies.
Yeah, that's true.
If they wanted to do a war set before the original series, they should have just made a show about the Romulan War. Would have been great.
Because the producer been told they're not actually allowed to speak about the Romulans, probably for that reason.
Well, really? Why?
Well, the Romulans, nobody knows what a Romulan looks like at this point, and nobody knows that they are Vulcans, or that they're subdivision of Vulcans.
But they know about the Romulans?
Yes, because they fight a war with them. And
I remember the episode in the original series where they were like properly introduced.
Yeah, but in that episode they discover that the Romulans are related to Vulcans.
Right, okay.
Because prior to that, the Federation had fought a war with them, but nobody had ever seen one. They like never opened communications, and it was all fought in space. And a Romulan War series would just have been 1,000 times better. You could even have had like a sort of Daenerys Targaryen style Romulan character arc that never intercedes with the Federation characters, so that like every episode has a couple of scenes for this Romulan character on Romulus doing Romulan things.
Yeah.
And like the Federation never know what a Romulan looks like, but we still have like scenes on Romulus or whatever.
I mean, like, you really need to establish a good premise for an alien species to have them be interesting antagonists. And we briefly talked about this earlier when we were talking about the Cardassians in Deep Space Nine. I think one of the reasons the Klingon suffers is because just out front, they're like, these guys are like, they're a warrior people.
Yeah.
It's like cardboard, cut out, fucking this is what they want to do, they want to fight.
They're also liable to start a war with someone for basically no interesting reason at all, which happens all the time. Like, you always hear it's like, if my people go back to the old ways, no one will be safe. They'll just declare war on people because they're bored. And that's not interesting in the least.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and then you look at the, as a bit of a counterpart there, you look at the Vulcans, who are entirely logically driven, so they're amiable allies, which works fine. But then you look at the Cardassians, who are characteristically incredibly patriotic. They both, like, it doesn't matter what kind of person they are, they always tend to do what's in the best interests of Cardassia as a whole. And that's interesting because it's usually...
What is in their personal interpretation of the best interest of Cardassia.
Exactly. It's the interpretation of how to go about that differs, which is why they're interesting antagonists.
Yeah.
Because what they start out having just being removed from Bajor, and then ultimately suffer from a war in the Klingons, which leads to Dukat allying himself to Dominion because he thinks that's what's in the best interest of Cardassia. And it changes throughout the course of the show depending on who is having an influence over their actions. And that's far more endearing, that's far more interesting to watch and develop. You know, when you watch the fucking Klingons, nothing's ever going to change.
No.
Nothing's ever going to develop.
No. Also, again, with the problem of the setting, we know how all this Klingon stuff plays out. There's a Cold War for 20 years or something, and then there's the Khitomer Accords. That's we know where it's going, so who cares? Like, it's just... Like, I'm not the kind of person who cares about visual continuity. I don't care that the Discovery doesn't look like it was like made out of toilet roll tubes 60 years ago. That doesn't bother me at all. But like plot continuity and knowing how things are going to play out, that is a negative influence.
Yeah.
And you know that's not the best thing really. I would have set it after Voyager.
So did we actually ever establish what our favourite episodes were?
Well, that's it.
It's very syndicated.
I mean, my favourite would have been the end of the Mirror Universe arc.
I really liked the last episode of the Mirror Universe arc. That was good.
Where Gabriel Lorca is basically getting all his forces and taking over the Emperor's ship.
Oh, yeah.
Lorca could have been better than he was.
I was going to say this, actually. It seems like they set up the entire show to have this massive build-up to Lorca eventually being... this isn't... Okay, so straight up, this is going to be like an entirely... spoilery
everywhere.
Podcast. Just talk about everything that happens in the
so
show.
Lorca, it felt like they were more concerned with the reveal than they were with what they would then do with
it
him afterwards.
Actually do with it, I agree. Yeah, because...
the reveal was admittedly great. They dropped the reveal and I was like, that was really good. And they did it in a really cool way where you thought he didn't know the name of that girl and all this. And
that was a very good scene.
Really clever. But then after that, he was just like a cartoon supervillain.
Which lasted like an episode.
Yeah, and then he got thrown down a hole.
And that was it.
I thought,
he's a baddie now, we're going to fight him. And they fight him for a little bit. Oh, we chuck him in the hole, that's it.
Yeah,
it's done.
and there's so many interesting things you could have done. You could have had it be like, he's been influenced by the Prime Universe and now he wants to bring Federation ideals to the Empire, and that's why he's doing his coup. Or maybe, like, he went to the Prime Universe to get technology, like the Spore Drive. But he basically seems to want to usurp the Emperor and institute exactly the same policies just under his control.
It's kind of the nature of an empire like that.
It's really boring in a fiction standpoint. Like, nothing's going to change.
There was also like I think they're almost hiding the Lorca thing behind the Ash/Vok transformation.
I guess.
Because I thought the Ash Tyler plot started out horribly and ended up quite good.
Yeah, I agree.
I think
it was tied in with too many non-convincing elements. Like, kind of like you say, the way that they introduced...
the romance plot was crap. The establishment of the romance plot with Michael was crap. It was unconvincing, and it was tied into a terrible time loop episode.
But ultimately, once that had been established, I thought the dynamic between them was quite interesting to watch.
Especially by the very end.
I mean, you never really see anyone have such a shit time as Ash Tyler towards the end there. It's hard not to empathise with the guy. Yeah. In terms
of the time loop, I know a lot of people like the time loop. But I guess it would have been fine, but I don't think a time loop episode should be this early in a show because it's like reliant entirely on you understanding the kind of banter and personality of the characters.
I suppose it was definitely the most familiar feeling Star Trek episode I think of this season.
Yeah, and as a result, it felt out of place because it was in this newer show, and it was, I don't know.
I guess it's definitely a strange character choice to bring back. It's like, there you go, that's another cameo. As well as Sarek, they had Mud. That classic, beloved Star Trek character, Mud.
I will also say, this might be a personal problem for me, because I just hate time travel and alternate universes and doppelgangers and anything that results in things happening that don't mean anything. I don't like it. Whenever you've done something that seems to be only there as an excuse for you to, like, kill off the characters and then bring them back at the end of the episode, or do something pointlessly shocking for short-term value and then retcon it.
Yeah.
I hate that. I hate it. And even though it's like less of a problem in a time loop episode, I just have this like instinctive hatred of time travel. So it's just I
don't know, it can be okay. One of the best time travel episodes I remember seeing was the one in the Next Generation where Picard ends up getting like sent back in time to...
Oh, Tapestry, that's an excellent episode. Yeah, well, that's not really time travel, it's more just like a vision quest thing.
It is. It comes up with the same issues that you claim to have with it, in that nothing really bore any significance by the end of it because it all already happened, right? Nothing happened at the end of that episode, but it was, I guess, how it's done and the consequences of the characters that are involved in that and have any sort of recollection and how that affects it later on as well, which the time loop episode in Discovery did have, you know? And whilst not like it, it is the foundation of the relationship between Ash Tyler and Michael Burnham.
The thing is that was clearly supposed to be a character development episode, and...
It really depends on how endeared you are to the characters at that point.
I thought in that episode, Stamets was great. That was a great... that was a great episode for Stamets. But it wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be the episode that sets up the romance with Michael and Ash Tyler. Yeah. And at that point, like, he got much better later on, but at that point, Ash Tyler was like a shop window mannequin. He was like the least interesting thing I'd ever seen. He had about as much character as like the Doors. Yeah. And he was just this plank of wood. But eventually, he gets all of his character informant elements from later on when he starts to have all of his like identity crisis and all that, and that was great. But when he was just some guy they'd found in a cell, you were like, I don't care about this person.
Lieutenant Liability, I like to call him. This guy who clearly struggles with PTSD, which they just decide to slap on as the chief of security and send out on important missions all the time. What did we watch? We watched the Horatio Hornblower recently, And when they're attacking it's like a Napoleonic naval show.
Oh yeah,
when they're doing like a stealth attack on a French frigate or something, they send out all these boats and include the guy who is prone to having loud fits. Command of one of the boats. Shockingly, ends up having a fit, and they have to like knock him out. It's like, why would you even bring that guy along you at any point? And I felt like that every time they sent what's his name, Ash Tyler anywhere.
So yeah, Kirkish just mentioned here that TOS is incredibly inconsistent even within itself, which is entirely true. And I've never cared that much about visual continuity. Really, doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
There's plenty, like especially in Star Trek, which has always had a horribly inconsistent canon. Every time I ever have to find out the length of a ship, I have to go and find 6 different source books that all give different numbers because nobody has a clue. There's no like policing for the canon at all. It's not like Lucasfilm where they have a story group that monitors everything. So yeah, it's about, in the end, it's about telling stories.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So I think the next major topic is
go on. What are we
about
into?
Casting and characters.
Okay, cool.
Move over our snazzy slideshow thing to the next one.
Whoa, look at that. We changed the picture. Who says we're incompetent?
There we go.
Oh, look at that. It's even got like a crossfade and everything.
Yeah,
if you'd have done it my way, it'd have just been a hard cut, but crossfade, now we're talking.
We're in the future now, Dan.
I was worried for a moment there.
So, what do we think? I think the casting generally was pretty great. Everyone was cast fairly well.
I was slightly concerned about Sonoyekwe, is that?
Sonequa
Martin Green, because coming from The Walking Dead, I was slightly concerned because...
This is literally the only thing I have to say about this entire subject.
The characters are pretty awful, and the acting is pretty bad as well, so I was concerned that she's going to bring a lot of wooden performance to this.
Oh, what, in terms of The Walking Dead?
Yeah, from The Walking Dead.
Right.
But I thought she was great throughout, and I was like, oh, very concerned, and I quite like Jason Isaacs.
Oh, Jason Isaacs kills it in everything. Jason Isaacs is great.
And then Doug Jones as Saru, I quite like. I really enjoyed his character because Doug Jones seems to have personality, even when he's got layers of makeup on all the time. And like Shape of Water's just out, so I haven't seen that just yet.
I'm sure it's supposed to be the character, but I couldn't help but just think he just looked constantly worried all the time.
I really liked Saru, and I keep hearing people don't like Saru, and I don't know why. I thought he was really endearing.
I don't honestly, personally, this is all just opinions, but I don't really get it. He's just a bit naff, really.
I liked his whole where he's like googling famous captains, and he's like super self-conscious about his command ability. Yeah. And then by the end of it, he's all like slinging torpedoes and throwing out orders, and it was pretty cool.
I think Saru occasionally got a couple of good lines when he could get 5 minutes without talking about how his ganglia were playing up.
They may have overplayed the ganglia thing a little bit. When he started his big speech, which was admittedly a great speech. He kicks it off and he's like, "You may all know that my ganglia detect blah blah blah." And you're like, "Oh, for pity's sake, Saru, give it a rest. Nobody cares about your ganglia." But then he kept going, and the speech was excellent. So
he did have like a lot of burns, like in the first early part when he's talking to Burnham, and she's talking about how keeping the captain safe. He's like, and he would respond with like, "Yes, I will keep my captain safe." And then he's like, "Ooh, Burnham, watch out!"
And he was walking around with his Blackberries in season 1. I really liked Saru, but every character in this show is like overshadowed entirely by the legend that is Cadet Tilly. I would watch Star Trek: The Cadet Tilly show because she's just brilliant. Everything she says, everything she does, like all the body language and the facial inflections and it's perfect. Brilliant character. Like, when she was in that last episode where she does the little Terrence salute.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we want to talk about favourite episodes. So we watch this week by week, and this is going to go on a bit of a tangent. When they finally brought Giorgio back...
Oh, yeah.
to be the new captain of Discovery, and they just got this Mirror Universe version over to take over, and then the Admiral was there, she's like, "This is... Giorgio, we found her in an escape pod or something. I know we just came back from Mirror Universe, guys, but trust me, this is not Mirror Universe Giorgio. She was alive all the time."
Yeah.
And
it was a little bit unconvincing that everybody on the ship just bought that.
Yeah. Well, we finished the episode, and I was like, "There's no way. There's no way people are going to believe that this is like actually Giorgio and just not the Mirror Universe Emperor, which they just met." And Dan was like, "Well, I don't know. There's no reason they wouldn't believe that if they were told it. I'm like, come on, she's going to get like 5 words in. Everyone's going to be like, there's no way that they'd ever believe her.
In fairness, the Emperor did a horrible job of pretending to be a Starfleet captain.
Exactly. At the beginning of the next episode, she's sitting there in the command chair and being like, I don't remember exactly what she said.
It's like, bring me some fried red shirts, lay the course for Kronos and load the WMDs.
And bring me some kelpin ganglia.
We have a saying where I'm from. What's that? China? Yeah. Kill them all. Yeah. Giorgio always used to say that. Which then led to the very good scene with Tilly.
Yeah.
She's not...
Yeah, that was wonderful. And then Tilly's eating the Ganglia Gorg, or whatever it's called, the space whale.
Yeah. That's very funny.
I mean, I quite liked Stamets and his husband.
They were a good little pair of characters. I like those. And Stamets particularly is quite interesting take, because he's like, his life's work's been like co-opted by the military, and sort of like being dragged along by it all. And then he's kind of vindicated when Lorca is not who he seems to be, because I like Stamets.
They were slowly turning him into a Dune navigator. I mean,
that's true.
Yeah.
So overall, do you guys like the show? We've been asked here. I have a generally positive opinion of it. I think it's probably the best first season we've had of a Star Trek show. In fact, certainly, because they're all shit. But it certainly had some pitfalls. It wasn't flawless, but it's not it's not like the spawn of Satan, like most of the Star Trek community seems to think it is.
Yeah, I don't think the divide is really entirely justified. I feel like, I don't know what people would expect for a new Star Trek show that came out now.
Yeah.
It's very much fits the bill.
Yeah, I think so. That's a good job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see what they could possibly do with it, because they've done so much in the first season already. Most of the time, it takes a long time for a new Star Trek show to build up, and then they decide to do something that's quite grand once everything's been established.
That's a nice, merciful thing about Discovery. It got straight to the point.
Yeah.
Star Trek shows never get straight to the point. There's always months of faff before anything meaningful comes around.
Yeah.
Before we even get to the central themes of the show.
I wonder if they're going to just go into idle dawdling from there on out.
I have to say,
an
though,
episodic format.
In quite an inversion of what Star Trek normally is, I'd quite like the second season to slow down a lot and have a lot of character development episodes and stuff, because the first season was quite fast-paced and relentless, and there wasn't too many moments for the characters to just like sort of discuss what had happened and
in any sort of convincing way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The second season, it needs to chill itself out a bit, and problem of the week is not an inherently bad thing. You can get away with it, and we could do with
great in Cowboy Bebop.
It was
great in Cowboy Bebop,
and we could do with some of that in season 2. But if starting it out with a syndicated arc was a good idea.
Yeah.
What's on next?
Oh yeah. Okay, so we're gonna hop over to our next topic here.
Actually, let's get up the last point about the characters. The recurring bridge crew cast need to have more to do in season 2.
See, I actually disagree. Like, they have a established recurring bridge crew with the Ginger Lass and the robot lady and whoever else.
Ariam, Detmer, and Warshaku.
Yes.
Reese was the tactical officer, but he didn't have much to do, mostly because the situation regarding that station on the ship kept fluctuating. Like, they had Landry, then they got rid of Landry.
Oh yeah.
And then they had Tyler there for a bit, and then he went nuts and like.
But I mean, the only difference is that they have they don't need to be established characters, but that's just fine if they're recurring. I don't think they need to say more stuff in it, like at all. Like, they are.
Maybe I don't know. It looks like Detmer. Just like there's a story to be told about her and Michael, because Michael's responsible for her life-changing injuries and all this. And
I mean, that all speaks for itself, though.
Maybe.
It literally all speaks for itself. I mean, all you would get out of that is a completely benign conversation where she explains everything that we already know. Like, I was there on Discovery, you guffed up my face a little bit, I'm a bit upset at you, there's tension here, we might resolve it in whatever happens this episode where we go down to a planet, get stuck together. It'll all just be a bit fucking pointless.
Maybe.
I mean, I did quite funny with the transporter crew member. He gets told not to mention about the Mirror Philippa, and he gets like one line in like the entire scene. He's like, "Don't mention this to anyone." It's like, "Oh, I might need some more lines to start mentioning it to anyone."
So I think we've pretty much covered everyone here. Tilly's great. Michael's fine.
One thing about the casting. So we found out that well, the Shenzhou was Discovery's Walker class, right?
Yeah.
Which was a name that I quite liked for an exploratory vessel. Yeah. It all sounds quite good. But then you told me that it is called the Walker class as like a homage to her role in The Walking Dead.
In universe, it's named after and also because John Eaves is interested in like X-planes from the 40s and stuff.
Right.
It's named after the X-plane pilot. I think it was Joe Walker or something.
Okay.
But there's also a bit of
tragically died in a zombie outbreak.
there's also a bit of sort of appraisal of her previous role in The Walking Dead. Yeah. Which is interesting.
This is a bit dark.
It still sounds great though. Walker.
It's still a good name. I like it. It's good.
So yeah, generally speaking, I really liked Saru. You didn't. I thought Stamets was pretty good. I liked his little arc. What's his name? Culber was pretty great. He wasn't around long enough to have any kind of meaningful arc really, because he wasn't even introduced until like the 5th episode. And
Which one was that?
The Doctor.
Yeah.
He was fine. He was fine as a character development tool for Stamets, which is often what characters get relegated to be. But
and Ash Tyler, to be fair.
Yeah. Ash Tyler started out incredibly boring and became quite interesting by the end. Mm-hmm. Lorca was consistently fantastic throughout the whole show. And this show has kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender syndrome, where everybody is way more interesting than the protagonist.
Oh, someone just clarified. Discovery is Crossfield class, and the Shenzhou is Walker class. Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah. I know that. That's we're talking about the naming of the Walker class.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's generally my thoughts on the character.
Mm-hmm. In terms of...
I'll tell you who's cool. Admiral Cornwell. She was a cool character.
Oh, she was good, yeah.
I liked Admiral Cornwell. Let's have more of her in Season 2. It was great when she disintegrated the fortune cookies. That was a great little moment.
The Tribbles just sitting next to it like, oh! Okay, cool. So up next we are talking about ship and station design.
Actually, just to reference Kirky here, yes, I strongly suspect the green spore thing with Tilly will result in some kind of Culber shenanigans.
Or Lorca.
I'm glad they didn't just resurrect him in the last episode of Season 1, the Doctor.
Oh yeah, that would have been a bit naff.
But okay, we're on to ship and station design now, which is where we open the gates of hell and let slip the dogs of Star Trek. So, I think all the ship design in Star Trek Discovery is fine. I think it's all fine, and some of it's even great. But actually no, the Klingon stuff's not. But all the Federation stuff's fine. The Crossfield class, I don't have a single problem with it. I think it looks fine.
I mean, they really just stick quite rigidly to the conventions of like Federation ship designs.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, nothing. It doesn't look like TOS, which means it doesn't look horrible. No. So I'm okay with that. I'm immune to this whole nostalgia goggles nonsense. I won't like make something look what is now bad just so that it's consistent with something that was made like decades ago. Yeah. That's a horrible attitude, and it's how you arrest development and make no progress, and there's like zero originality. So yeah, I think the designs are fine.
I do really like the Shenzhou though.
Oh, the Shenzhou's gorgeous.
Yeah.
My two favorite designs from this are the Shenzhou and the Cardenas class, which we saw as the ISS Buran in the where we briefly see it running away from the Terran flagship in a flashback. That's a really nice ship.
Oh, the Terran flagship, that was just...
That's deliberately like
extra.
They went down to the VFX guy and they were like, we need this like mental Ming the Merciless kind of ship right here with a sun glued to it. It's like completely over the top. And that's what they did. And the Karen looks like that, so that's fine. Hopefully the Klingon designs will be improved next season because all of those are pretty bland.
I mean, honestly, I think if they just focused on something that wasn't just entirely Klingons...
Yeah, I get rid of the Klingons. The Klingons are boring. Let's have the Romulans, or let's have an original race or something.
The trouble is with introducing an original race which bear any source of significance to the events of the Federation is that needs to be justified or tied up neatly at the end in such a way that it doesn't matter that it didn't appear later on as well.
It's another reason why we should have had a post-Voyager show. Oh, somebody just mentioned the new version of the Connie. I really like the new version of the Constitution class because it actually made me like that ship, and I don't like that ship. I like the TMP refit Constitution class, and I really like this new one, which has most of the elements of the original TOS Constitution, but it just looks 1,000 times better because it's got like greeblies and details and Aztecing and all the things that original model didn't have because it was 1960 whatever.
Yeah.
And it's fine. It's what happens when you modernize things. It just looks better.
I just want to see a new Miranda class. They don't all guff up. Miranda class is my favourite ship in Star Trek. It's just so plucky. Bless its little consocks.
What's going on here? I wonder how the warp core... what the engineer... That's another thing. We haven't seen a single engine room.
The entire show, we didn't see the engine room of Discovery.
The room on the Discovery that is like used as the engineering set isn't main engineering.
It's just the
spore drive lab. Yeah. We've never seen the Discovery's warp core.
Or like the chief engineer around.
Well, Stamets is the chief engineer.
Oh, sorry.
And he's the chief science officer, which makes sense because the ship is like built entirely around his theories.
It's interesting that the chief medical officer didn't play a prominent role in that, like at all. Just sort of meet them offhand when they're operating on Ash Tyler down later. The important Doctor character was not the chief of engineering, who was Stamets' partner.
Oh yeah, Culber wasn't the CMO.
Yeah.
He says at one point that he needs to go and see the CMO. So I guess maybe that was the woman who we saw later on.
It's implied.
I guess
so.
I think she was a commander, that woman. So that could be her.
Yeah. Which is quite good. I think it's quite nice to break away from those conventions of having like the captain, the chief doctor, and the chief engineer.
Yeah, even that's another thing with Burnham.
Characters.
Burnham was a specialist, and Tilly was a cadet. That was nice. We had some lower decks officers. That's always good. What's this? Kirky. The new one fits into the visual continuity better in a lot of ways. Yeah, I mean. Well, I have to assume, like...
I mean, they had to update how the Constitution looked. If you just kept the same design, it would just look out of place.
Well, yeah.
And then there would have to be this entire reasoning behind why that looked out of place.
Yeah, like, it'd look out of place 30 years ago. It's like... It's the way it goes. Yeah. The wheel turns. You got and people go, but they put an exact replica of the original Constitution in, like, this episode and this episode when they did time travel... I was like, yeah, but it's always in like tongue-in-cheek episodes, like Trials and Tribulations and In a Mirror Darkly and stuff, because that's what it is at this point. It's like, look how we started out, look how far we've come, look how much better everything is now. Yeah. I don't think going backwards is a good idea, and like they did Enterprise. I assume this had the same kind of ridiculous reaction when Enterprise came out. Everybody went, it doesn't look like TOS. It's supposed to be before TOS. It doesn't look like TOS. But it looked better. It looked like it took loads of inspiration from the International Space Station and all that kind of stuff. And it had like visible heat tilings and really detailed hull plating, and they kept that kind of thing into this new version of the Constitution, as Kirky's just said. And it has like NX style nacelle grills. It looks really good.
I find this quite consistent. Things seem to like bleed more into like what the NX class looked like since Enterprise came out. I think that's quite telling. Things like the Walker as well. They kind of kept that updated, more rugged-looking design and applied it to existing conceptions and designs.
Yeah.
Which is quite good. I mean, it's just looking newer, really. You know, you break away from the 80s and 60s.
I mean, all these people are like, I need visual consistency, and like when they went back and did Enterprise, they replaced what was clearly supposed to be all the old Daedalus class ships that were mentioned in the books, and like all the stuff that Cisco had models of, and all the ships that like we hear about the Romulan War being fought with atomic warheads and all this, and they went back to Enterprise, and clearly that's not what that is. But like we've had enough time pass now. It's been however long since Enterprise came out, and all these Star Trek fans have like Stockholm Syndrome their way into accepting that. And you give them 5 minutes and they'll do the same thing for this. It's just we're in the intermediary period now where they have a big moan, and it's like, come on, just enjoy the story for pity's sake, or don't. But don't enjoy it because you don't like the story. Don't make yourself hate it because it hasn't got jelly baby buttons. Like that's insane. You know that's just me.
Fair, definitely fair attitude. So before we move on to the next thing, I want to go have a cheeky break. Have we got any more biscuits, Dan?
Potentially. Oh, actually, there's cookies here if you want them.
Oh yeah, cool.
You always need to feed your employees.
Let's have a look at the chat. Discovery designs will get brighter. Yes, it is very dark. The whole everything's just like very murky in the VFX, which is although I heard they wanted to like progressively move that closer to a kind of bright lighting thing as the show went along. which I guess would be fine. That is one thing that I will say. They could stand to improve the brightness in the space scenes. Also, it has typical science fantasy syndrome where every single shot has 95 nebulas and a pulsar in the background. It's not called space because it's full of stuff. It's called space because it's empty. You know, it's not we're not constantly in an endless soup of colourful stuff in the background. But yeah. Is the Enterprise operated by Starfleet? Oh yeah. Yeah, and they had to like make up an entirely different warp scale about for TNG because and then you have that Voyager episode where they go warp 10 and everyone turns into lizards. It's
classic.
I hate to say it, but the continuity's always been screwed. I'm sorry, but it's been screwed from the start, and it's, you know, even adhering to what each individual person perceives as the correct continuity now would be like a meaningless bandaging of something that is long dead. It just tells stories.
So welcome to Ship and Dan complaining about the story design section.
No, the story, like, I thought I have a rather positive opinion of the first season of Discovery. I just think that whether you like or dislike this should be based entirely on its writing and its performances and its content, not some kind of like meaningless template that you've decided it has to be ahead of time and are now going to be angry about it not being. Because if you go into anything like that, you're just going to end up spending your whole life disappointed in whatever you see.
I think if there was like one single person in charge of the whole design and adaptation, like a George Martin of Game of Thrones, who's more on board, you would have had all these problems of continuity and design would have largely gone away.
I think for an IP that has spanned as long as
40,
Star Trek
50
has,
years,
you cannot have one person that can be in charge of absolutely every concept of continuity and design for the entire duration of that IP. It falls apart. You see something similar happen in Star Wars, like eventually on the switch the stage we'll approach the guy and be like, what do you think about this? Like what colour will be the like outer retinas of generic alien B in this one scene? And be like, I don't know, pick one.
Here's the thing though, right? You've got to write a Star Trek show in 2017 and you've got 50 years of canon on your back. The only thing you can do, the only thing you should be obligated to do is to maintain consistency within your own show. That's it. So long as Discovery stays consistent to itself, it's done its job. Because if you're going to try and stay consistent to the rest of Star Trek, then you have to pick one of the 5,000 interpretations of what that means from every individual fan who has their own idea of which of the 17 source books correctly depicts the length of the Excelsior class or whatever. There's too much variation, and all you can be expected to do at this point is to make sense to your own story.
Yep, I think that's a really good attitude to have towards something like this. I mean, Star Trek has always been quite timeless. So it's just time for it to move on.
Yeah.
Anyway, Pete, what did you think about the ship and station designs?
Well, I thought they probably made themselves some problems for themselves really by the where they set themselves. If they'd have set them in a different time period, they would have.
Yeah.
They probably have largely lost all these sort of problems. Have been in the future, you wouldn't have had these complaints or as many of them.
I will fully agree that the show should definitely have been set after Voyager. They opened themselves up to criticism they didn't need to open themselves up to by setting it here, and so far the show hasn't done anything that they could only have done because it's set when it is.
Even if they just went and fought, they could do exactly the same thing. If you were just fighting the Klingons, have some new religious nutjob come along and like disband like 24 houses, or try to unify them when they're no.
You could have set exactly the same show in after Voyager, and just have like the Enterprise E show up at the end.
Oh.
That's like something like the 25th century or something, you know, well ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they'd have lost Sarek, but you know, that's fine. I mean, I will say the guy that played Sarek did an excellent job.
Yeah. Sarek was really good.
He was really good. But you could easily replace him with some kind of other cameo mentor character.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people to choose from.
You could have Worf.
Yeah, or Data. Anybody. Picard. And also, we're in the stage now where all the people who enjoyed Star Trek in the 90s when it was in like the 24th century, they'd all be really excited and encouraged if you brought out a show that took place after Voyager.
Yeah,
whereas the hardcore TOS fans are long gone. Like, they're still around, but you can't touch it. Like, you can't do anything with it because they'll hate it, whatever it is. So better to just appeal to the 90s people and new people.
Yeah. I suppose to some extent, I don't know if this was part of the decision-making process, but the idea of setting something afterwards might have given the impression that you needed to be familiar with everything that already happened. And I think that turns some people off joining series. You know, you look at things like games as well, like people don't want to play The Witcher 3 because they haven't played the first two. I kind of had that same thing as well. But if you establish that's something you don't need to get over, then it's fine. It's fine for new members.
Yeah.
That might have been part of the process when they decided they want to set something in between, because they know all that's happened before that was original series Star Trek stuff.
Yeah.
Where nothing's significant enough really.
They've so far not taken advantage of the opportunities that Enterprise presents. There are still a lot of Enterprise fans kicking about, and Enterprise had a really big renaissance on Netflix recently. There should definitely be an Enterprise crossover in season 2. I think
that'd be really cool.
Because T'Pol's still around, Phlox is probably still around. I don't know, Archer would be like 83 or something.
The actor who played Archer actually expressed interest in forming a cameo.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
But obviously nothing came of that.
Yet,
yes, of course.
Did they say they were going to start the next show in 2020?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Is it?
entirely basing that off of that Jason Isaacs.
Yeah, Jason
tweet.
Isaacs did a tweet, but that's about it at the moment.
That's a very long time.
Oh, Shran would have been great.
Who's Shran?
Jeffrey Combs' Andorian character from Enterprise.
Oh yeah, that was one of the best things about Enterprise.
Jeffrey Combs is fantastic in everything. He's great. He's so good. He was Wayoon. He was great as Wayoon. It was brilliant.
But the guys that played the Andorian in Enterprise were the same guy that played Wayoon in TOS. Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
He's played loads of people in Star Trek. Jeffrey Combs.
Oh.
He was Brunt, the FCA Ferengi.
Oh yeah. Oh, God, it was great.
I'd be so down for Shran showing up in season.
What they should do is just start an entirely new series and base it all around Ferengi politics and what happens with them. That would be great.
Should we move on to the next topic?
The struggles of Nog in his new age Ferenginal. That'd be great. Yeah.
Content.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, okay, cool.
The final slide, I believe.
Yeah, final thoughts. Kind of things what we might want to see the next season. So probably I'd like to see more of the secondary crew. I mean, obviously mentioned it before, but I feel they need more fleshing out a little bit at least.
I mean, if they do set it in a, I guess, more easygoing episode of the week format, and it's really no telling whether or not they're going to do that or like just jump straight into another overarching plot, it would definitely give them an opportunity to flesh out some of the other characters, right? And even though I said earlier, a lot of them I don't think needed fleshing out, especially in the context of the show as it existed, it would be fine to do that. You know, I've got no qualms with that happening at all.
So my main hope with season 2 is that it slows down a little bit and we have some. I'm a fan of tropey old. This is a Tilly episode kind of thing. I like it when characters just get an episode to do something. I know that's like a tired old 90s thing, but you know, it's Star Trek. Just do it. It'd be great. We need to flesh people out a bit and chill out and have some.
We can get an episode about Lorca's Tribble. I think would be quite good. We definitely had enough episodes about Archer's dog. I mean, why not?
Who do we think the captain's going to be?
I assume it's just quite a new character.
I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be Saru, really.
Well, he said it's
I mean, so Kirky's in the chat here, so you've not seen The Cage, have you? The original, pilot for TOS, where it had Pike and all that?
No, I haven't.
No, but anyway, in that, Pike's first officer was just referred to as Number 1, and Kirky suggested Hayley Atwell, who plays Peggy Carter in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right. Okay.
And that's like perfect. That sounds amazing. And if they and that would make sense because they've just rendezvoused with Pike at the end of season 1. and if they like dumped her over as the, and I believe somebody mentioned that Michael Burnham was like really heavily inspired by that character or something. So it'd be cool if the writers wanted to bring them over.
Yep, that'd be cool. Honestly, for me personally, I think I would be quite happy if they just remained like unrelated to existing characters or things which get involved with ships and crew that we're already familiar with. Just kind of let it do its own thing. It's the idea of having a premise where you have to finish on a certain status quo.
Yeah.
That prevents, tension in some scenes or telling interesting stories.
Yeah, yeah. I was really hoping that Cornwell would stay as the commander of the Discovery. Because
that just seemed like it would have been the best course of action.
Yeah.
I mean, not only was she a very interesting character, but it would have made more sense in the context of what was happening than just arbitrarily getting evil Giorgio.
We've never had a main character admiral. It was supposed to happen in DS9, but Rick
Sisko,
Rick Berman wouldn't let them promote Sisko to admiral because he thought that viewers would not be able to relate with an admiral. Which is probably because they've already written 9,000 episodes where Starfleet admirals turn out to be psychopaths or children in disguise or green blobs or whatever.
And quite consistently just seem to fall into this trap of becoming an admiral, getting bored in an office somewhere, you know what I'm going to do? Some scheming.
It kind of makes sense from almost the incompetency from the stun of Starfleet when, in the early part of the season where Lorca is captured by Klingons, just randomly out of nowhere, just la-da-da-da-da, picked up.
Yeah, that was bizarre. What was the entire plan there? They're just going to ship him off somewhere in some unprotected shuttle, and shockingly he got intervened and captured.
What's this?
When Lorca got captured.
I was saying it's Starfleet just gets...
When Lorca got captured by who?
The Klingons?
The Klingons. Which is how we met Ash Tyler. And Mudd.
Yes, that was weird. The Discovery seemed to drop out of warp on the edge of a system and then send Lorca
by himself
by shuttle across the system to the starbase. And then he was intercepted on the way back, I guess.
Shocking.
That was that scene with the D7. My God, this really pissed people off. This was egregious and pointless. I'll admit fully, but the computer chimes in and it's Klingon ship detected, D7 class, and I'm sitting there thinking it's not going to look like a D7. It's not going to look like a D7, and they cut to it, and it doesn't look like a D7. I'm like, why would you do that to yourself? Do these people not think I mean, it doesn't bother me, but you're just inviting backlash.
I guess.
Why would you do that? Just don't.
It's a counter argument to that would be if they've already established that they have to stick to a trend of new designs. So if you're just going to introduce a whole new set of designs, but just have them as different classes of ship, then you have to arbitrarily come up with a reason as to why those other classes just aren't around. I mean, they've already established that everything looks different, so why can't they just have the same name and be the same thing that looks different?
I think by this point,
the same thing with the Constitution at the end as well.
By this point, I think they need to accept that Star Trek fans aren't going to accept that it's a visual reboot. And they didn't make that very clear. If they'd have said, okay, listen up, it's like James Bond, yeah, we're changing what it looks like, but you're not supposed to look for an explanation. It's just a visual reboot. But they didn't. They never made that clear. They were like, it's Prime Universe, it's canon, just whatever. So now everybody's trying to find these complex, hackneyed explanations to try and figure out how all this makes sense. And you're not supposed to. It's just a visual reboot, and that's the way it goes.
Still wasn't a massive fan of most of those Klingon ships.
No, all the Klingon ships are hideous. Apart from the Veglar, that looks pretty good.
I like the idea of having a coffin ship. That's pretty metal.
That was one of the least rubbish looking ones.
Yeah.
It looked okay, the sarcophagus ship.
At least there was function behind the form.
Yeah. Somebody's talking about Garak, objectively the best character in Star Trek.
Yeah. The Cardassians were just great. They're fantastic antagonists.
They really were. Yeah. I'm wondering if there's going to be a season-long antagonist faction for Season 2, or if it'll just be, things happening for a bit.
I think it'd be... I mean, they kind of had that at the start of this one, where they had, a large event starting, and then they dropped into a bit of an episode of the week format, and then went back to an arcing Mirror Universe plot. And they'd be fine if, they did something similar, whereby, half the season was a problem of the week episodic format, and then they had a arcing plot, maybe.
You know what's one thing that makes me really sad? One thing that makes me really sad about when this show is set is that we're never going to get the Borg.
Oh, that's fine.
No, I mean, like...
The Borg are great.
I want to see the Borg in 2018 VFX. It would be great.
They arbitrarily did it in Enterprise, and that didn't make any sense. So,
that was stupid.
Yeah, I feel like that's the best case scenario.
That wasn't like... that didn't even take advantage of it, because we didn't see like a cube in 2004 graphics or whatever. It was just like some assimilated like ice cream truck or whatever that they stole. And like... whatever. I want the Borg. I want to see the Borg again, because they're just like the best villains in Star Trek, and they're one of the most intimidating sci-fi villains ever put on screen. Like
the Borg were great, but I would argue that they did enough with them. That's the entire premise, right? That they're like this mindless, intimidating, like completely hopeless enemy to fight, and when they get introduced, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because the situation is just so completely dire. There's these terrifying, augmented, we're going to assimilate you enemies. But similar to the Klingons, I suppose, in what we were talking about earlier, in that there can't be a great deal of development for an enemy like that.
That's true.
You know?
The Borg are something that should be used scarcely. Or they shouldn't have been used in Enterprise, and they shouldn't be used in Discovery because of when it's set. But it's a shame that the setting of Discovery prohibits the use of the Borg, I think.
Yeah, I suppose. I still hold that, I think...
I'd rather they came up with a new Borg-esque race rather than bringing back the Borg. That could be cool.
Yeah. I think
you know who were really great? The Dominion. They were great. That was a great... They were like the anti-Federation. They were like a mirror of the sort of alliance of races ideal, and in like an evil way, and that was very good. The problem is though you can't introduce like a big massive faction that the Federation famously fought into pre-TOS.
I mean, they would just have to do something new, really, which would be fine. You know, they did it in Enterprise with the.
Actually, how many seasons would this show have to run before we hit TOS?
I mean, it's set 10 years before, right?
Right.
Roughly.
Yeah, although we went farther than 1 year in the first season because we had a 6-month jump.
And also, you don't know how long between season 1 and season 2 will be.
Oh, we had a 6-month jump at the start, and then we had a 9-month jump at the end. Plus, normally Star Trek, the actual events of the season take 1 year in universe.
There's no reason you have to stick to that rigidity, though. Also, at what stage did Kirk become captain of the Enterprise, and did his 5-year voyage start? Would you be assumed that it started at the beginning of the original series airing?
Yeah,
or they were dawdling about for about a year?
Because the Enterprise is in service now, but Kirk's not captain of it yet. And I don't know where Kirk is right now. I think he's assigned to... Is he like on the USS Republic or something? Or... Oh, that's the good point. Kirk has just pointed out 7 seasons is the classic Trek length. And now that we've used 9 months and 6 months and 1 year or whatever, if you did 7 seasons, it would end with the start of the 5-year mission.
Oh yeah, oh that's true. Oh, that seems like a bit far-fetched. Can you imagine if it ran for 7 seasons, especially after finishing now and claiming the next one's going to start in 2020?
We get to the last episode of Discovery,
like
and somebody turns up on the bridge with a big pile of like multicolored Crayola uniforms and like plates of like green jelly or whatever, and it's like, sorry, you got to wear these and eat this now. Take all the camouflage off all of the like guards and everything. You've all got to wear bright red. This is just the way things are now. It's a quantum surge in technology and uniform design. It's really...
yeah. I mean, it's got to be touched upon at some point, I suppose.
Yeah. Strip out all these consoles. We're gonna get some. Some
jelly beans,
featureless matte beige computers, and we're gonna replace all of the touchscreens with like cassette tapes and stuff. Like, they wouldn't have to think about this stuff if they just set it after Voyager. So I mean, that's probably what I would have done. But fair enough.
I still think there's hope for more. I'd be quite excited to see where they take it.
Oh, the Shellyak, that could be interesting. I'm hoping we get another Trek show running alongside Disco before it actually finishes its run in a different era. Done really well for CBS. Yes, isn't it like the best? It's like the most successful thing Netflix has had for ages.
You told me that it was like the biggest thing that they ever put up there.
I found some chart of like earnings or whatever, and Discovery is like, for all these people who are slagging it off, they seem to watch it first because it really is doing well.
I wonder how CBS Go is doing in America as well, because
Yeah, I don't imagine it's doing as well on that as it is on Netflix.
Oh, is it airing on TV there as well?
No, it's airing on this weird like CBS only paid streaming service.
Oh,
which sounds a bit dodgy. Somebody, Kirky's just said we should have another show running alongside that's set in a different era. That would be a good idea.
Oh, what, like TNG DS9 style, where they just like start
yeah.
shows that are in tangent with what's happening. That could be quite good. Again, I think you suffer from a lot of the same problems in that it's just more you need to focus on.
I'd like the one thing we've never had a Star Trek show about is a fleet. We've had a Star Trek show about a station, and we've had loads of Star Trek shows about a ship. I think we should have like an expeditionary fleet going somewhere.
Deep Space Nine got pretty close.
Yeah,
at least in terms of the scale of the things that were happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess for that you'd need like fleets only assemble for a purpose, right?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of kind of like a Battlestar style. Maybe if they had some kind of like.
Even Battlestar still really only followed one mainstay ship. They were just kind of escorting a fleet of civilian ships.
Still, it's a good premise. It's a good situation to tell stories in, and it makes you really endeared to each ship and like its role, and it makes it easy to have like big, meaningful status quo changes when like literally like you blow up a ship and it's like a whole chunk of the show's world just falls away, and you're like, oh, okay, like it's always a big deal when something like that happens. So a show about a fleet could be cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty cool. Can you imagine if they just set up like an entire series that was set after Voyager with like Battlestar Galactica style, Earth gets destroyed, the Federation fleet is like carrying the rest of humanity and just dithering about.
Well, there was a series of books. I read the first one. I wasn't hugely impressed with it, but apparently it gets better later on. It was like a post-Voyager series where they send a bunch of ships with quantum slipstream drives back to the Delta Quadrant to go and like make contact with all the races that Voyager met.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any like canon writing for Star Trek outside of the series?
There's 3 Discovery prequel novels. And that's it. One of them I think is about Prime Lorca, which is quite interesting.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Have you read any of them?
No, I've not. No.
Okay.
Apparently, one of them makes the argument that only the Constitution class ships have the 60s interior. It's like some kind of thing they tried out for that one class. And trying to explain that stuff is just like self-destruction. It's not going to work.
Do you see interiors of other ships in Star Trek the series? You must, right?
Yeah, but they're always Constitution class.
Really?
Every Federation ship in TOS is Constitution class.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Like, what was the Miranda class wasn't introduced until
that's
like
introduced in Wrath of Khan.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my god. I mean, that does help explain away a lot of the changes in design.
Yeah, Kirky's just pointed out, Trek has very strange rules about canon. It's like, not canon if it's a book, but it's kind of like,
I think it's
kind of like secondary canon.
Where it's easier to assume that there is no established rules for canon and just go with the flow.
It's bizarre. The fan base that is most fanatically obsessed with continuity is the fan base of the IP that has the most bafflingly confused, inconsistent, broken continuity I've ever seen.
At least with Star Wars, what's a bit more fantastical, like, sticks to its rules, I guess.
What's this? Or it's on screen, or if it's on screen, then incredibly stupid that isn't canon. So no warp 10 lizards. Yeah, we're talking about a franchise here. We're talking about a franchise here that once removed something from the canon on the basis that it was too stupid. That's like what's happening here. You know, we got to remember what's going on. You see some smaller shuttles, mostly parked inside of a console. Yeah, you see shuttles. Are any Trek books good? I've not read too many of them, but Star Trek Destiny is fantastic, and that's that deals with Ezri Dax.
That's Ezri Dax, right?
As captain of the USS Aventine during a Borg invasion of the Alpha Quadrant.
That does sound like it would be very good.
It's really cool. It's like a crossover of everything. It's got Voyager and it's got the Titan and the Enterprise and all this stuff. It's like a big Game of Thrones style conflict in the Alpha Quadrant.
Cool. Is there anything else you wanted to touch upon, Pete?
No, I think everything's been wrapped up quite nicely. Between the two of you.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So say thanks for having me on for this discussion.
Oh yeah, sure. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, a good time. Any final thoughts you've got on the matter?
I think it's pretty good. we've pretty much covered everything really. It's Star Trek Discovery has succeeded in making me excited to see more.
Yeah, I agree.
So well done, Star Trek Discovery.
I remain only curious to see where it goes and what they're going to do with what they've established.
Oh, hang on, there's a question here. Do you have any action sequences, space battles that you really enjoyed? I absolutely loved the...
the Battle of the Binary Stars, I think, was...
That was pretty good.
That was great.
But I absolutely loved the attempted rescue of the USS Gagarin. Oh, yeah, Kirky's just put that there. That was great. Do you remember that one? It's also... It doesn't really make any sense when you think about Lorca's motivations later on, because he, like, throws the spore drive into the path of torpedoes to try and save this Federation ship. And, like, why would you do that? He could easily have just not done that and nobody would have batted an eyelid. But whatever. That was a really cool sequence, and the music was great, and it was like really well shot, and I like...
Is this when the Discovery arbitrarily like warp drived in or spore drived in above the city and then stood there until they were down to like 1% shield?
No.
Okay.
It was a bit where there's just... It's like at the start of an episode, there's just an unrelated battle sequence where Lorca tries to save this Federation ship that's being ambushed by...
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great. I've rewatched it loads of times because it's just like really well put together, and you get loads of cool shots. This is another reason why I like the window view screens.
Right.
Because you get like proper parallax like dimensions. Like they can put a shot of Lorca standing in front of it, and it's got all like the crosshair overlays on the screen.
Yeah.
And it looks good. I mean, I have no problem at all with bridge windows.
You can get the same thing from a view screen, though.
Yeah, a view screen
it
looks kind of flat, doesn't it? Because it's a screen. It doesn't have like depth of field. Like you can't like look at it on an angle and see different angles.
I suppose. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if at that point in Star Trek you could just like have a simulated view screen that would also simulate depth from different angles like that. It's entirely not...
See, I would slag that off if not for the fact that I've written it into a screenplay I'm writing. Because I desperately didn't want the ship to have windows. Because as the Geth would tell you, they are structural weaknesses.
There you go.
But I mean, Star Trek, every single room on the ship down to the toilets has got windows. So like, we're long since past trying to avoid structural weaknesses. Even the Defiant's got windows. And that's like a purpose-built warship. So
it's fine if you have functional shields. As soon as they get through that and you start taking hull damage...
Yeah,
you're in trouble anyway.
Yeah, it's talking like excuse me. So partial sneeze happened there. The yes, I do like the kind of cavalry rescue moments. Just talking about the
transparent aluminium.
Yeah, it's the Enterprise from Star Trek First Contact, where the Defiant gets saved by the Enterprise E. Well, the Defiant, which is crewed by like Worf and Ensign Jim or whatever, because they left the entire senior staff on DS9. I'm getting the impression Windows are coming up as a topic in every single Spacedock stream. I do apologise.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Even when it's a Windows update.
How do they know we're always going to talk about Windows? Are we that transparent?
Oh. You are most transparent. I can see right through you.
And on
that bombshell.
On that note.
Okay, thank you all for tuning in to our rant there. I think that was worth diving into. It was probably a wise idea not to actually put this as a podcast on the actual Spacedock page, because we would incur the wrath of many people.
Thanks to you guys for joining us. I don't think we're going to put this on our thing. We'll probably just be shot down. But anyway,
I'll put it on my channel.
It'll be on EuroHybrid if you want to check it out. And you can find if you search EuroHybrid on YouTube, you'll be able to find the channel to which this will be uploaded that Pete runs.
No, I had a lot of fun doing this. I think if nothing else, Discovery never fails to be an interesting discussion point. You know.
Yeah.
Because it's got so much. It's got so much. It's got to carry. It's got a lot to live up to. And it's done it all in a very new, interesting way.
I never really trailed off it. I always tuned into it whenever it was on.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It was always solid entertainment.
Well, the next big science fiction show for yourself will be The Expanse.
Oh, that's back soon. That's very exciting. We should do post-episode discussions for that.
Yeah, it's true.
That'd be good fun.
Okay, cool. So, we're going to shoot off now. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.
This has been Spacedock, Daniel and myself, joined by Pete from EuroHybrid.
Yeah.
And go check him out.
Yeah. And we're going to quickly cut this off before we end up on a new tangent.
Yeah, before we fucking start something else again. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See you around.
Bye-bye now.